Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. We made it. It's Friday. Your weekend, for some of us, is already here. Whoop, whoop. If you worked a little earlier today and you get off work at 3 or 4, then you're basically there. But for our 9-to-5ers, you're 2 hours away. And for us,
we're just getting started.
We're just getting started, baby.
I'm unemployed, so I have nothing to do except show up for radio gigs like these from 3 to 6.
That's right.
So Terry texted me yesterday. He's like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I was like, "I'm unemployed, sir. I have nothing going on."
So there's nothing going on. Whatever you want me to do.
I'm watching motivational videos at home on my couch. This is what I'm doing.
One can watch only so many Muhammad Ali. I'm going to show you how great I am videos.
And these people who are have Instagram accounts now, they're like, I was broke 6 months ago, and now I have $2 billion in my account. It's like, what?
It's like you know magic. No that is impossible. Right. You're a magician.
Right, yeah. Comment change. Yeah, okay. Anyway.
That is Mike Gillespie filling in for Jay Phillips today. Our man, Mike Gillespie, our favorite unemployed media member in this market, because then he gets to hang out with us.
That's true.
From 3 to 6 to help us put a bow on this really odd, interesting week.
Yes.
I'm Elijah Campbell. It's the Postgame Show. If you don't know, now you know. But we got Mike in from 3 to 6 with me, hanging out, talking sports, doing our thing. And look, it's been an interesting week. And before we even got started, right, I was going to ask you what your thoughts were on the Jim Schlossnagle story, because that's seemingly the story of the week, right?
Sure, of course.
Coach for major SEC school, takes said major SEC school to the national championship game, berates poor reporter for asking about a certain job opening that opened mere hours before the game started, only to take said job opening that reporter alluded to, not 24 hours later. Oh, and by the way, that job opening was their biggest rival. Oh, by the way, that school is not only their biggest rival, they're coming into the conference next season. And then you get to see them every year in every sport now.
Yes.
I don't know if we've seen anything quite like it. We've gotten a lot of Lane Kiffin comparisons with leaving Tennessee for a year, but
that makes sense.
I don't like the way it ended was ugly, but it wasn't for a rival or anything like that. It wasn't after taking them to a national title game or anything like that. I mean, they were 7-6, but it was still pretty ugly. This is going to go down as one of the ugliest departures of a coaching job, not just in college sports, I think in pro sports too.
And it didn't have to be that way.
No.
Right? Like, that's the thing that I keep coming back to. Like, on its surface, it's bad enough, right? Okay, you're leaving Texas A&M for its arch rival nemesis, who's joining the conference in July. That's bad enough. You leave the day after, leading Texas A&M to the national title. That's bad enough. But then, like you said, Elijah, it's like you double down by going after a reporter for a very legitimate question, by the way.
Turns out it was way more legitimate than we thought it was at the time.
His performance, I'm going to get a little political here, but this is the only thing I'm going to say. His performance was worse than Biden's last night.
Yeah.
And Trump's.
Yeah.
Like, that was terrible. What I watched last night was awful. And, like,
didn't even watch.
Performance,
knew it was going to happen.
It was just, I turned it off after 10 minutes. But, like, that performance from Schloss was just awful. Like, and all it takes is one SID, sports information director, for those who don't know, who aren't in our business. They're basically the PR people for teams.
Media handlers for coaches, essentially.
All it takes is one dude to say, hey, Schloss, you're going to be asked about this. Here's what you say. You say, this is not the time and place to talk about this. I will address those rumors at another time. And that's it. That's it. Like, yeah, you're not going to look great because you literally are going to leave for Texas the next day, but, like, you're not going to look as piss poor, right?
Exactly. Because his response to the question already raised red flags and brought attention to it.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
Because now everyone's going to be looking at that job opening being like, if you take this, I swear to God, we're going to make so much fun of you for doing what you did. And it's this easy. Look. I can't focus on two things at once. My team just lost the national championship game. I'm still processing it.
Yes.
I haven't even thought about next year yet. I appreciate you asking the question. I know you have to. But I haven't even thought of what's going on next year, what this team's looking like, what my future's looking like. We're going to take it day by day. Bam. Make it as boring as possible. Make it to where your answer is not newsworthy, because his answer was newsworthy, right? Like that thing made its rounds on Twitter
100%.
very, very quickly. Now, while some people be like, "Oh, well, he didn't deny it," that's better than what ultimately ended up happening.
Yeah, he didn't
age worse.
Yeah, but who's like getting the printout of the what he said verbatim? Like, no one is. No one's like, no, but he addressed it in the past tense. It's like, okay, right? Like,
exactly.
Okay, we're splitting hairs here. Like, I mean, clearly it was just not the right way to handle it. And there are just so many other things that he could have said. Like, when we have to dive into, well, he addressed it in the past tense. Like, once we get to that point, right, like, you've already made a mistake in the way you answered the question,
Right.
Like, it just didn't have to go there. It could have been extremely simple. Now, I want to know where this man is going to vacation in Texas, because he's already managed to piss off two very big brands and two very, powerful alumni bases in TCU and Texas A&M. So where does this man go on vacation now?
If you ask Charles Barkley, he says Galveston.
Galveston.
But over there at nasty beach, that nasty-ass water dropping up on the shore, make you people think he's at the beach. Hey, Chuck, where are we sending Jim Schlossnagle? Galveston. I ain't sending him to Cancun. I'm sending him to Galveston.
That's funny.
Which is easily the funniest bit on television is Shaq making Charles Barkley reiterate something.
Yeah, that and when I don't want to get in trouble for saying this, but when he did say this verbatim, he was like, when a guy's banging you, remember that?
That's right.
And then, with the minute he said that, right?
Talking about like a one-on-one matchup in the post.
Yes, in the post, right, yes. When you have a defender on you, yes, but when he's like, when a guy's banging you, and then Shaq just lost it and Ernie was cracking up, it's like.
No one can complete a sentence, and there's that one moment where he just goes, come on, guys.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, what else do you expect? Like, come on, you can't start a sentence that way.
And then expect nobody to start laughing.
Right.
And this example that we just made is the reason 1,000 they should be doing the halftime broadcast for the college football playoff game they're going to get this year.
I hope so, man. That would be amazing. Like, as long as it's like dismantling the Beatles. Right? It really is, right? Like, these guys have been together for so long. They have so many great hits. Like, it's just, like, can we just keep these guys forever? But, I mean, life doesn't work like that, and I totally understand. But they're also, I feel like they're still in their prime.
Certainly.
Right?
For broadcasters,
Right, like, they have not, the level of product that they're putting out is as good as it ever was. So, like, why take them off the air? Like, try to find some creative ways to keep them on board.
The magic about them is because, like, I'm one of those people when I watch, like, a studio show or I'm listening to a broadcast at a football game, basketball game, whatever, make me smarter.
Yes.
Like, as a fan, make me smarter, make me understand the game more. And they make me not care about that. I do not care if I learn a single thing watching that show or watching a halftime show, because they are so funny.
Creative and funny.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just, for sure.
Like, it's one thing that makes me stray away from what I normally crave in sports media, and when I consume sports media, I don't normally crave that, but they're so good at it that I can't stop watching.
The great in our business now, and by our, I mean, like, the media business in general,
Collective whole.
The collective whole, they find ways to be funny, entertaining, and informative, right?
Yes,
like,
combining
all three of those. Yeah, like, say what you will about, his politics or whatever, but, like, I always felt like Jon Stewart did that super well with The Daily Show, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was just another way to bring information to you, but it wasn't this, like, stiff news anchor, talking to you. It was like, hey, let me be a friend and make some jokes. Like, okay, good. And I'll also be able to digest the information that you're telling me about a subject that I know nothing about in politics.
Exactly. And that's why Inside the NBA has been so successful.
Oh, my God.
And I, like, even though sometimes it does annoy me, and sometimes I take it for what it is, when they do the NCAA tournament and you have, like, Kenny and Chuck in the studio, and you can tell they have not watched a second of college basketball all season
100%.
long.
Yeah.
But they start making fun of Shaq because Shaq said something like, we wore our uniforms in the showers. It's a real clip. He said they wore their uniforms in the showers. Or was it Chuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Chuck that said that.
Yes.
Chuck goes, we wore our uniforms in the showers because we didn't have enough time.
Yeah, they didn't have enough time when they were on the road traveling. Yeah, they didn't have enough time to wash the uniforms, and everyone else is like, "What are you talking about? Like that." That's not a thing that anybody did. You must have been the only one on the team that stood in the shower to wash your uniform.
And Clark Kellogg's like, we played in the same era. No, we had plenty of time to wash and dry our uniforms.
Right. Like to wash and dry something doesn't take that long. Right? It's not like a 4-day process.
Oh, that's the funniest thing. So they will get TNT will get a college football playoff game. I want nothing more than to see those guys.
Be tremendous, man. Be so funny. And like I don't care have the same group. Like I don't care that it's football and these are former basketball players. Like they're going to make it entertaining. They're going to make it fun.
Have you ever thought like the idea of the crossover, cuz ESPN used to do this with basketball.
I remember this. Yes.
Where they would have the college guys do an NBA game.
Yes.
And the NBA crew do a college game.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to find that really fascinating, mostly because rest in peace Bill Walton would be on the call for the NBA game. And he did the NBA forever, though. Before he started doing college games, he was broadcasting NBA games.
Yeah.
But I always found that really, really fascinating. Even though that's not what they study on a normal basis, they're applying their attitudes towards a specific part of the game and applying it to either professional or collegiate level, whatever the inverse of what their specialty is.
Yes.
I always found it interesting. Would I want that for every broadcast? No, but I found that to be, pretty interesting.
Yeah, if you do it like once or twice a year, I've always been a fan of having different voices come into a sport, right? Like to me, that's always interesting. Like I used to listen to, like when they interviewed Nick Saban a couple times at the Masters, right? Like they would ask him a question about like who he likes in the field, and my ears would always perk up because I'd be like, "Oh, that's Nick Saban talking about the mat. Like that's cool."
How does he address golf analysis?
Yeah. It's just different, right? Like I would love to hear. I don't know, not that. This isn't a thing anymore because he's retiring, but I'd love to hear like Vern Lundquist do like a soccer match. Like how would he call that? So like once
takes over.
Yeah, like once or twice a year. Like I'm cool with that. But no, I mean, there's a reason why those guys do what they do, and have their own box that they stay in. Like there's a reason why Chris Fowler doesn't do basketball. Like he's never expressed interest in basketball. Like I don't think he wants to do it. I don't think he even like loves basketball. Like I think he likes the Heat. Like I think he likes the Miami Heat, right? And going as like a, random,
as a fan.
A fan. Yeah, exactly. But I don't think he would want to call it, but I would love to hear him and like Herbie call a basketball game.
Like to hear him try
That'd be cool. Yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, certainly. When it's not a lot of fun is Jim Schlossnagle's will be his first year in the SEC because of how he left A&M. But what will be fun for him is that he's going to make a lot of money, and it's not been specified how much money he's making yet, but it's kind of a trend in the SEC, not just in all other sports, but in baseball. The arms race that's going on with the SEC in this sport and the gap in talent they already have, is this going to be something that propels the SEC even further ahead of their Power 4 peers in the rest of college sports? We're going to get into that later on in the show, as much as a bunch of other things. Blind portal quarterback resumes. Excited about that when we're going to talk about some crazy ACC travel that is going to be happening this year in football that has been quantified. We'll break down those numbers and react to them and a whole lot more throughout the show. You're listening to the Postgame Show. I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Mike Gillespie. We'll be right back. Opened up the show today talking about the biggest news in college sports this week. No, it wasn't that Tennessee won the College World Series. It's that the loser of the College World Series, Texas A&M, lost their head baseball coach to an arch rival less than 24 hours after losing that baseball game. And one thing that is getting discussed more when it pertains to Jim Schlossnagle taking the Texas job is that he's not going to Texas for free. They needed to, fork over a pretty good amount of money to be able to lure him from Texas A&M to Texas. And I know him and Chris Del Conte are reportedly best friends, but the power of friendship isn't alone going to be enough to get you to leave a school that's treated you really well and a place that you've built to incredible heights. That's not going to be enough to get you out of there. There have been rumors that he can make up to $3 million and be the first ever college baseball coach to make $3 million in a year. And Mike, as you're listening to the postgame show, Elijah Campbell here, Mike Gillespie. I was looking over today. In the last couple of days, Jay and I have talked about just exactly how much more SEC schools are going to have to invest in their baseball programs to be able to keep up. The league has gotten a lot better. You sent 4 teams to the College World Series this season, and you had, 5 teams in super regionals. You could have dominated the entire field in Omaha. So with all the schools, funneling more money, whether it be into coaches, stadiums, you see here in South Carolina, you went from paying a coach less than $700,000 a year to $1.2 million, and invested a lot of money in the staff. You now have the highest paid assistant coach in college baseball in Monty Lee. It's a real thing. The SEC arms race, it no longer just means stacking up on pitchers, but it means paying coaches a lot of money and investing in the sport in a way you've never done it before.
Sure.
Mike, this morning I was doing some research on this, and in 2022, would you like to guess how many coaches in the conference were making at least $1.5 million a year?
Oh, 6.
That number would be only 1. That was Tim Corbin in 2022. This is not ancient history.
Oh, 22.
Yeah, in 22.
So I know Sully was making, or maybe this was this year, Sully was making 1.8?
Yeah, after they went to the College World Series.
Yeah. Okay.
Or championship.
Yeah. So 1.8. Yeah, I know Tim Corbin was the highest paid in college baseball, which was kind of mind blowing when these numbers first came out. Like I had a buddy of mine tell me, he's like, yeah, I'm hearing. This was a couple weeks ago. He's like, yeah, I'm hearing Texas could be paying, their new coach $35 million over 10 years, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness.
And you say Texas baseball, right?
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, okay, well, Tim Corbin is the highest paid in college baseball, and he's making like 1.9 or something, or 2, whatever it is. That's an insane jump.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just for a sport. Also, let's talk about like the financials of the sport for a second.
Right.
It's a sport that barely breaks even.
It's not considered a revenue.
They're
sport.
not making money. ESPN doesn't make money off of this, right? So that means that no one else makes money off of it, because when you don't have a good media deal in place, right? Like these schools don't make money off of that particular sport. So for a sport that's non-revenue generating, to pay a guy $3 million a year certainly seems like A, bad investment, or B, they know something that we don't, which could be a new media rights deal coming. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, when you look at the total viewership of the College World Series this year, when the field was first announced, right, like people are kind of like, your average baseball fan was like, well, we're not going to watch that because it's from basically two conferences, right? And we all know that the SEC is pretty much going to dominate, and they're going to go on to win the College World Series. But then you look at the viewership numbers, and they're through the roof. Like people watched. So when people start investing in a sport, look at what's happening with the WNBA. Look at what's happened with the, women's college basketball and the women's tournament, right?
The records they shattered this year.
Right. And so the more people tune in, right, it's like that old adage, like if you build it, they'll come, right? Like, okay, well, it's being built now. To me, it's such an enormous jump to go from, the highest paid college baseball coach in America last year was making, south of $2 million. And then now all of a sudden this guy's making $3 million. Like, I mean, and to me, like, has he even earned it? Like, to me, like, seriously, man, like, if you look at, the best college baseball coaches in the country, right? I mean, it's tough to argue against Schloss because he was one win away. He was one win away from a national title game, or from a national title.
Six outs away. They were in the seventh when they gave up the lead in game 2. They could have swept Tennessee.
That's true. Yeah. So, and then you compare his resume, against guys like, look at Kevin O'Sullivan. He's taken Florida to 9 College World Series since 2010. 9. He's been there. This is a crazy stat. Kevin O'Sullivan has been to the College World Series more times than he has not.
That's remarkable.
Like, that is a statement. He's been there more times than he hasn't.
That's worth paying like $2 million plus a year.
Yes, that's worth $3 million, maybe $3 million. But Schloss, I'm like, okay. I mean, I get it, right? Like, you're really good buddies with the AD at Texas, and they want to help you out, and they feel like they've got their guy, especially when Tony V tells them no, when Sully's not interested in leaving Florida, when Tim Corbin, is getting up there in age, and, they don't want to spend, I guess, that kind of money. And they're not going to lure Corbin away from Vandy anyway, I don't think anyone will at this point.
He's pretty set.
Right. So, I mean, I guess, their options were a little bit limited, I guess, there. But, to me, man, it just was... those figures just were kind of astronomical, and I don't know how they plan to make up that revenue.
Unless they know something, like you said,
they know something we don't. But I mean, Elijah, I'm thinking to myself too. Like, I've had a ton of conversations over the last couple months with people on the inside at USC, people at Florida. I went to the University of Florida. I'm still very well connected down there with people, right? Like, these administrators are very concerned, right, about this 22%. That's coming out of their athletics budget. If you're unfamiliar, it's basically this new, agreement after the NCAA legislation came down. It basically says that in every athletics budget now, that 22% of that media money has to go to athletes, right?
As a part of that House NCAA settlement.
Yes, and a pay to play, right? Like, so you've got these universities now that are like, that's $22 million out of our budget. So we need to figure out, like, hey, how are we going to make up $22 million, per year? That's not just 1 year. I mean, that's not 5 years or 10 years. That's 1 year, man. That's 1 year's budget. And do we have to cut, whatever? So, when that news first came out, man, like a couple months ago, I'm thinking to myself, well, could that affect coaches' salaries, right? Like, I mean, are coaches' salaries going to go down because that's a huge chunk of money? Well, apparently not. I mean, that's USC just hired the highest paid baseball coach ever that they've in school history, right? And then this guy is going to be the highest paid college baseball coach ever. Yeah. So,
you went from having one coach in the SEC at the baseball level, making at $1.5 million,
right,
to after 2024, there are 4 additional coaches that have reached that mark, and there's potential for more too. I mean, because after 2022, the 2 participants in the College World Series between Jay Johnson and Sully, both got raises to where they reached that threshold. And then Vitello reached that threshold this past year. So he's already there, and he's going to be making more. He's going to get a raise and make more. And Schlossnagle was at 1.475 before this year, and whether he stayed at A&M or not, was going to get past that. So that's 4 that you're going to add to that list, making it 5 coaches in general. But then Nick Mingione at $750K. Oh, just kidding. No, Mike Bianco from Ole Miss is making over 1.5 after last year. So that make that 6 coaches. God. You went from 1 to 6 that you guaranteed are going to be making over $1.5 million for next year, and that's not even mentioning Nick Mingione, who's making $705,000 now at Kentucky. He's probably going to get into that ballpark because he took Kentucky to a College World Series.
0 baseball history.
None.
Before he came along.
None at all.
Right.
None.
And by the way,
an afterthought there.
His resume was also kind of like J.J. Redick's, by the way. Because he had never been a head coach like anywhere.
An incredible gamble for them.
For sure. And then they hire him. Kentucky hires Nick Mingione to be their baseball coach. And not only did he take them to their first College World Series, they had never, this is one of my favorite stats from this year, they had never, ever, ever been to the postseason 2 years in a row. And so not only does he take them to, the supers again, but then they go to the College World Series. It's so cool, man. I love that story so much.
He'll be making well over $705,000 this upcoming year and for the rest of his career.
I mean, and then, you look at some of the other investments, in the sport. I mean, Lindsey Nelson Stadium, right, at the University of Tennessee, $95.8 million in upgrades are coming to that stadium.
Yeah.
That's a baseball stadium. $95.8 million. Like, where are they getting the money for this?
And what does it mean for the rest of college athletics?
Yep.
Mike and I will discuss as the postgame show continues. Right. Is an investment of $3 million a year for a baseball coach a good investment? Time will tell. We don't know yet. Mike and I will discuss later on in the show, but I'll tell you what a good investment of my time was, and that is with the coaching that I've been getting with my friends at Columbia Secret for Weight Loss. Look, weight loss sometimes is a team sport. You can't do it on your own sometimes. You need coaching, you need planning, and you need someone to help hold you accountable. And the combination of all of this, without using any shots, any pills, anything like that, is what makes Columbia Secret for Weight Loss so successful, and is one of the reasons why I was so successful and I was able to lose the amount that I did. Paul, Grant, and Shaylin are fantastic coaches that hold you accountable, get you on the right track, and living the life that makes you healthier, live longer, and better. And if you'd like to learn the secret of losing to up to 1 pound of unhealthy fat per day and start your own success story like myself, give them a call, 803-824-4210. Again, 803-824-4210 for Columbia Secret for Weight Loss. Results may vary. College baseball contracts, $3 million or more per year for a coach. That's the reality we're living in the SEC right now. I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Mike Gillespie filling in for Jay Phillips this afternoon. This is the Postgame Show, and we discussed the raw numbers behind it in the last segment where in 2022, it was only Tim Corbin making over $1.5 million. Now we could have upwards to 7 to 9 coaches if Oklahoma gives their coach a raise. He's right on that border as well. Chris Lemonis is at 1.3. We'll see if he ends up getting a bump to maintain competitive for Mississippi State. And Wes Johnson from Georgia got an extension up through 2030. Now, the specifics on what he's getting paid hasn't been released yet, but he's making $700K before that. I can imagine to make it competitive, you might see him in that $1.5 million ballpark. So because of that, and whoever Texas A&M hires, let's say they don't get Mengione and they hire from outside the conference. If they do that, and A&M's going to spend a lot of money to do so, I would say well more than $1.5 million. That would put 9 coaches in the SEC making it over $1.5 million after just 2 years ago there was only 1. We talked about how it's a significant arms race and what this means for the SEC. And Mike, when you hear those numbers, where does your mind go when we're talking about what this is meaning for schools like South Carolina, who just, like you alluded to, made their biggest investment in baseball in school history?
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of what we were talking about, a couple minutes ago. It's like, do these schools know something that we don't, right? Like, is there going to be some massive media deal coming out in the next couple years that we're unaware of? Because that's the only way I can sort of justify spending that kind of money. And then, like I just said, man, like they're doing at the University of Tennessee, they're putting in close to $96 million in stadium improvements into their baseball stadium. Like, where are they getting this money, and is it sustainable? So that's where my mind goes, man. It's like, is this at all sustainable? And I have no idea. I mean, I guess, again, if you build it, maybe they'll come, but, where are those dollar signs coming from? That's what I really want to know, especially in an era where you're already taking so much money out of an athletics budget to begin with to pay players now. Where is this money now trickling down from?
It's one of two things to me. Either, like we previously mentioned, the athletic directors and the conference commissioner, Greg Sankey, simply know something that we don't, that they have maybe some leverage in negotiations with ESPN and Disney properties, that they'll be able to get a lot more from the current TV deal than they have in the past, or maybe that another one's coming. They might know something like that could be on the horizon. Or the football revenue, which is basically the largest chunk of everybody's revenue in college athletics, is just so large that it's able to fund schools like this or certain sports to this extent if they really have that desire to win. Like, here's the thing. Like, we just got, with each passing contract that is a rights deal for the college football playoff, now they're going to 12, it's going to go up. And eventually they're going to move that bad boy to 14 very soon. Maybe as soon as next year. It's going to go up. And eventually it's going to go to 16. It feels more of an inevitability than anything. Then it's going to go up even more. Oh, and there's a really good chance the basketball tournament expands to a certain degree too. And that would mean more money. How much more money? And if it's worth the hassle of the tournament is a whole other discussion in itself, but you will make more money. So is the anticipation of that, along with college sports and college football being more profitable than ever before, meaning you can take from that pile and dedicate over 10 years $35 million to your baseball coach, more of a worthy investment than it has been in the past. To me, it's just one of those two things.
It could be. And then, I know obviously the leagues are looking at other revenue streams, right? Like, so now you could have on your football field, you could proudly display any business logo that you want, right? I mean, like you could have a Buc-ee's logo, at Williams-Brice Stadium on the field, and so that's generating a lot of money.
Whoever does that's my favorite team.
Right?
Yeah,
for sure.
You win my loyalty with the Buc-ee's logo at any point on your field, so congratulations.
I mean, the stadium naming rights, right? I mean, that, that is another part of this too, another, stream of income. There are certainly ways to, I think, make some of that money money back. I just, again, it's a lot of money, man, for a non-revenue sport. But hey, more power. I've always loved college baseball, man. I'm a college guy. Like I've never been, that much of a pro guy. I mean, I was raised in a college town, grew up around college sports. Like that's my jam. I go to that. I gravitate towards that. So the more money that goes into college athletics, the better, in my opinion, because that only grows the product, I think.
Certainly.
But yeah, I mean, like when these figures first come out, it's just a little eye popping because 10 years ago we're talking about a highly paid college baseball coach is making like $500,000 a year.
Yeah, it's amazing how even adjusting for inflation, how crazy these jumps in contracts are going for coaches, and it makes me believe, because I love looking at certain sporting events, certain happenings, not just through a wins and losses scope, but through a historical scope. How are we going to look back on this College World Series in 10 years if the sport has grown exponentially? Are we going to look back at this year's College World Series and seeing 4 ACC, 4 SEC teams play, and you get all this investment, you get all of the eyeballs that you attracted to the product, and you're continuing to one-up yourself in viewership, and you see an off-season where the coaches that make over $1.5 million a year almost grow by 8, Like, if that is the result of all of this, how pivotal would this year's College World Series, and the fact that it was 4-4 of the 2 best conferences in the country, because the ACC will have to up their game up too if they want to keep competing, because before long it'll be like 5-3 or 5-2-1 or maybe 6-1-1. We might see that number get a little more lopsided if this makes other conferences have to compete with the SEC and find ways to be able to make themselves relevant again. We can look back at this College World Series being one of the more influential spring sporting events that's happened in the NCAA in recent history.
Well, and to your point, Elijah, it's trickle down from football, right? So, the more of a gap that exists between the SEC and the ACC, right? The better SEC teams will stay, and the worse ACC teams will be, just because of the difference in financial numbers, right? Like, I'm a little surprised. I understand the ACC has some of the best baseball in the country, but I was a little surprised that they got in half the field. Like, that's pretty incredible to me. Now, certain things happened along the way to knock out, like, I think Florida was responsible for 2 of them, right? Like, Florida
taking out Clemson.
Florida knocked out, right? Like, Florida knocked out the Big Ten champs. They knocked out the Big 12 champs, and then they knocked out an ACC top 8 seed. So, I mean, that certainly helped. But I was very surprised that the ACC got in 4 into that College World Series. But again, this is why you've got teams like Florida State and Clemson that are trying to say sayonara to the ACC because they're just simply not making enough money. Another thing, Elijah, that I would be really interesting to track over the next couple of years, okay, we're starting to see it with baseball now. These contracts start to become astronomical. What's the next sport? Is it softball, right?
Yeah,
like, is
certainly.
it, something a little more niche like lacrosse? Or does it not get to those sports either? I don't know. But, I do want to sort of like track, okay, so it's happening with baseball, what's next? It could be softball, with a new media contract, maybe. You saw eye-popping numbers for this year's Women's College World Series, right? So
yeah, definitely.
Are softball coaches going to start making a ton of money too? I don't know. I mean, in the SEC, probably.
It's certainly gotten to the point where we're getting a Cold War-like arms race for SEC and coaching salaries. But another position in all college sports that is seeing some pretty good compensation, quarterbacks in football, specifically when it comes to the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So how would we view certain quarterbacks without knowing their name or the school they came from? We're going to do a blind resume transfer portal quarterback exercise when the post-game show continues. It's funny, during the break, Mike Gillespie, and for Jay Phillips today on the Postgame show, we were talking about a horrific dating show that he found. And so it's not maybe as horrific as like blind dating, but we're going to do a similar exercise, but with transfer portal quarterbacks. I'll go ahead and explain. This is what we're going to do here to round out hour number 1 of the Postgame show. I'm going to give Mike the resume of 2 real-life quarterbacks who were in the transfer portal that are playing for Power 5 schools now, but played at different schools last season. And Mike, just based off those resumes, is going to tell me which quarterback he'd rather have. Mike, are you ready?
I am ready.
The wildest
Can we call this something?
I need to come up with a good name because all I have is quarterback blind resume.
So what was the name of the show that we were talking about?
MILF Manor.
MILF Manor. So these are transfers. Can we call it TILF? TILF Manor.
We'll do TILP. Yeah, transfers I'd like to play.
Yes, there we
go. Transfers I'd like to play.
There we go.
This is this is Portal QB TILP Manor.
Yes.
We'll go ahead and start with contestant number 1, QB number 1. This quarterback threw for 26 touchdowns and 9 interceptions at the G5 level. He has 1 year of eligibility left, but has 2 full seasons of starting experience with over 4,000 career passing yards. I'm not only going to give you stats, I'll also give you what the kids would call, aura, or the vibe of this player.
All right.
This player is notorious for being accused of peeing on an arch rival's logo at their practice field last season. So he got in a little bit of trouble for that.
Okay.
Quarterback number 2. This is a former top 4 prospect in the entire country in the 2023 class. He threw for over 1,600 yards last season with an 11-9 touchdown interception ratio at a Power 5 school as a part-time starter, shared the starting role with another QB, is still considered to be one of the top 10 players in the transfer portal whenever he entered, still has plenty of upside, and as a Michigan high school football legend, he won the Player of the Year in the state his last 2 years as a starter.
Yep.
Are you interested to be on your team, quarterback number 1 or quarterback number 2?
I'm going to say number 2.
You're going to go with quarterback number 2?
Less of a headache with number 2.
Okay, less of a headache.
Yeah.
He is not going to urinate on the logo of your arch rival.
Correct.
Or maybe he does. He's just a sophomore. There's still plenty of time left.
Maybe, yeah. But they make medicine for that, and hopefully we can curb that.
Rehabilitate it. Yes.
Yeah.
So quarterback number 2, that is Dante Moore at Oregon. He has chosen to go to Oregon to be the backup behind Dylan Gabriel, which is different from guys who transfer. Usually transfer to go to a place and start right away. He'll back up for a year and then take over once Gabriel leaves.
Right.
Gabriel only has a year of eligibility. Quarterback number 1 is Diego Pavia, who is transferring from New Mexico State to Vanderbilt. So that will be Vanderbilt's new quarterback this year.
Yeah.
A bad boy.
That makes sense.
Yeah, which feels un-Vanderbilt-like.
It's very weird.
The off-field stuff.
Yes, like that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I was being sarcastic, by the way. Like that is a very, very strange courtship there.
Doesn't make a ton of
I don't
make a ton of sense.
I don't get it.
But
I don't get it at all.
Clark Lee has him a new quarterback, and he's got a very interesting resume. These 2 quarterbacks, this is a very interesting one. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this. QB number 1 has 1 year of eligibility left. He won 3 state titles at a high school powerhouse in Philadelphia, a 24-6 touchdown interception ratio last year with over 3,000 passing yards at a major Power 5 program.
Okay.
Was a blue chip recruit.
Yep.
And his last pass, however, was an interception that ended their season. Quarterback number 2. He was only a 3-star quarterback out of high school. Senior, also with only 1 year of eligibility. Both guys, 1 year of eligibility. He had a 24-10 touchdown interception ratio. Led his school to a conference title in 2022 at the Power 5 level. Threw for over 2,600 yards last year. Ran for almost 400. And played high school for a school whose mascot is the Whippets. And scored over 1,000 career points in basketball. And back where I come from, Whippets have a different connotation.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, different connotation. But it scored 1,000 career points on the hardwood for that school.
Wow.
Are you more interested in quarterback number 1 or quarterback number 2?
I think I like 2 because he's a proven winner and he's also dual threat.
He is a dual threat, and he can hoop a little.
Love my dual threat quarterbacks, man.
And this is interesting because you chose Will Howard, the former Kansas State quarterback who will be at Ohio State, and you picked him over Kyle McCord, who was Ohio State's quarterback. and will now be at Syracuse in the next year. So if you were Ryan Day, just by giving those resumes, you're making the exact same decision.
Hey, just call me Ryan Day.
That's right.
That's right. I make a whole lot less than he does, but you know what? Apparently I can make the same decisions.
He makes a lot of money.
He does.
And will for a long time.
Yes. Worth every penny.
Last one, number 3. Correct number 1. A senior completely rewrote the conference record for passing yards, not touchdowns, passing yards in his Power 5 conference. 3-star out of high school, over 11,000 passing yards for his career, 89 touchdowns, but will play for his 3rd head coach this year. We'll let you sit on this one because we got to hit the break. Mentored since middle school by Gardner Minshew. Quarterback number 2, a former 5-star, one of the best high school players in the country, last year of eligibility as well, over 8,300 yards, has played with 2 Power 5 schools, and was drafted by the Los Angeles Dodgers to play baseball last season. So we'll let you sit on that.
All right. Yep.
And when we start hour number 2, we'll tell you who those 2 gentlemen are. Hour number 2, post-game show, coming up next. Okay. Hour number 2 of the postgame show kicking off right now. You're almost to your weekend, my friends. We are almost there. Elijah Campbell here, Mike Gillespie in studio today, filling in for Jay Phillips. Jay got on his vacation a little bit early.
Where's he going?
For him. He's going to the beach. I don't know which beach. I forgot already.
We should call him.
What we should do, and this is back, I know back in the day, people used to prank call from radio stations all the time. Just give them a call from this number. See if we can like star 69 it or something to make it like show up without a caller ID.
Yes.
Bring him up on here on the board. That way he answers over the phone. He answers and he's like, hello. And it's just us, just talking. But we ignore him the entire time. Like, we don't acknowledge that he's on the show. He's just, hello, Elijah, is that you, Mike? But we're not acknowledging him.
Or
we're just like
talking. Or just we're like talking crap about him the entire time over radio. Over the airwaves.
Yes.
It's like, God, that Jay, he's just terrible. What a terrible host, even though he's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's the best. But, like, if he just answers the phone, it's just us completely ragging on him. And us pretending like we can't hear him on the other side.
Right.
But he's on air, so he doesn't
He would just hang up immediately.
Immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. He's too smart for that.
He is. But it would be fun to get somebody on that.
It would.
We ended the first hour playing a little bit of, what did we say, Tilp Manor here?
Yes.
Transfer I'd like to play. Or Tilts I'd like to start, because when you get a transfer portal quarterback, you prefer to start them. And the quarterback themselves would prefer to start for you. We got 2 of the 3 down, and we left with you to think and stew on this one.
Yeah.
And for those who missed it, giving the blind resumes of these quarterbacks here. Quarterback number 1, 1 year of eligibility left, last go-round. He completely rewrote his Power 5 conference record books with 11,775 passing yards and 89 career touchdowns. He'll be playing for his 3rd career head coach and was mentored in middle school by someone named Gardner Minshew, who ended up being an NFL quarterback and is still a fantastic backup and journeyman to this day. Free spirit, loving man. Quarterback number 2, also last year of eligibility. But whereas QB number 1 was a former 3-star, this one was a former 5-star. He's thrown for over 8,000 yards at his 2 Power 5 schools that he's played at, was actually drafted by the Dodgers in the 20th round of last year's MLB draft.
Okay, I think I know who both of these are, and I was not impressed with quarterback number 2 when I covered him. So I'm going to go with quarterback number 1.
Yes.
Because this kid also has an incredible arm, quarterback number 1. So we're going number 1 over 2.
And number 1 you think is?
It's 2 is DJ Uyunglele.
That is right. DJU is number 2.
1 just escaped me. Oh my God. What
DJ Uyunglele will be at Florida State this next year.
Yes, he will be playing at FSU. Their starter, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
And number 2 is this is great radio.
This
by the way.
But you're like, I already know who number 2 is, and just based off that blind resume, which is why this is a good exercise.
That
would be Will Rogers.
Will Rogers, thank you.
Yeah, going to play at Washington.
Yes.
So Michael Penix's replacement, going to play at Washington.
Which is weird because Minshew, didn't he play at Washington State?
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah. So
they're both from Brandon, Mississippi.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
So that's the connection. I think Gardner Minshew actually played for his dad. So Will Rogers' dad is an offensive coordinator at a high school in Brandon, Mississippi.
Yes.
Where Gardner Minshew also played. And when Will Rogers was in middle school, he looked up to him, and that was his mentor. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love stories like that. Yeah.
Nice backstory.
I was not super impressed with DJU at Clemson.
Wasn't a best fit.
I don't think it was. No. I mean, the kid's got an arm. Clearly.
Certainly.
But, some of the decision making I didn't love. It just seemed a little slow out there at times.
Especially for a kid that was a 5-star that was supposed to be kind of like this dual threat type deal. It didn't seem to fit him. I'm happy for him that he went to Oregon State and found a place that fit because 100%. He found him some success. And as soon as he does that, the coach bails for Michigan State and takes his backup to go to Michigan State with him.
Right. Yeah. No continuity at all in his college career. Which you got to feel bad for guys like that. But, I mean, thank goodness that the transfer portal exists now for guys like that, right?
So he's not stuck at independent Oregon State.
Right. Exactly. Like, you hear so many negative things, right? Like, from people who hate the portal. Well, look at it this way. Like, a kid who, it doesn't, he doesn't fit at Clemson, right? So he's got to find a new home. So he goes to Oregon State, right? And then his coach bails on him. Right? Like, what do you do? His conference bails on him. Right?
Everybody bailed on
just
him
like he has no home anymore. So, like, in that instance, like, the transfer portal makes a ton of sense and, like, actually helps this kid out. So, like, hopefully he does great things for Florida State as long as they're not, passing for 9,000 yards against Florida's defense. That's all I care about.
That game will be in Tallahassee this year too, right?
Yes, it will.
That's a big one, potentially with bowl eligibility for Florida. That schedule is just
I could see that.
Nasty.
Yeah, you get to the end of that November slate, and I just hope that Florida's players have all their limbs.
After the gauntlet they go through.
Yeah, because it's like Texas, Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State, I think, something like that. In some order like that.
It's disgusting. We complain about the South Carolina schedule here, but it's nothing compared to the horror.
Quite literally the hardest schedule I think I've ever seen in my life. Did I say Texas was in there?
Yes.
Or LSU. LSU, I think, is in there, too.
Now, for Florida, they've got they open with Miami.
Yeah.
And Miami's going to be a lot better than people think. Like Bruce Feldman actually has Miami in the playoff. Like in his playoff projection in the 12-teamer at like the 11 seed. So like the last at large.
Do they know how to kneel the ball this year?
You would think they would learn, but that's not Mario Cristobal's forte.
No.
He's taking a knee.
Yeah. If only Cristobal had a crystal ball and could see the future.
He could see that Hanks King was going to throw a rocket into the end zone. He might think a little differently about that decision.
I could see that, though. There's a lot of talent. I mean, all of those Florida teams, man. I mean, like, I don't think Florida's getting enough love, to be honest with you, because they're loaded with talent, man. Like that blue chip ratio is insane.
It's really good.
Very, very good. They return, the most efficient quarterback in the SEC last year. I mean, say what you will about Graham Mertz. He's a pretty solid quarterback.
Unfortunately, nobody here, I think, can talk too much mess about him after what he did at Willie B back in October. Yeah,
well, that's true. The problem is that they had their best running back bolt for Georgia, and that's never good. So, I mean, they're talented on the lines of scrimmage. I think secondary's going to be pretty solid, but running back's an issue. I mean, I just don't know how much depth they have back there, and losing ETN is certainly massive for them. So I could see, anyway, getting back to your point at Florida State, I could see that being a game for bowl eligibility for sure. Yeah,
that's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And thankfully for Florida State, because Florida is really good, that game will have no I guess impact on whether or not they go to the ACC championship game. Possibly they might be in it at that point, but winning the ACC this year is going to be significantly different because not just because they added like powerhouses. No one's going to accuse Cal, Stanford, and SMU of being powerhouses because Eric Dickerson and John Elway ain't walking through that door.
Right.
But it's going to make travel a lot more interesting. And later on this hour, we're going to get into the newest conference matchups that we're most excited for. Conference games that we never thought in our lives would be conference games, but will be this year, but that we're actually looking forward to. But, Mike, you sent me something this morning that I found to be fascinating because somebody actually took the time to quantify exactly how much travel is being done in the ACC. It's going to be a lot because the Atlantic Coast Conference isn't playing all their games in the Atlantic Coast anymore.
Right.
So you sent me this, and Cal, it was a ranking of all the teams in the ACC by the miles they will have to travel this year. And I love the range of 1 to 17.
Yeah.
Because number 1 is Cal.
Yep.
Cal will be doing the most traveling. They're going to travel through 26 different time zones.
That's unreal.
They will be the trip average is 4,000 miles, a little over 4,000 miles. And over the course of the year, They will be in a plane traveling over 20,000 miles, almost 21,000 miles.
Yep. Now, this is just football.
Yeah, just football.
Yeah.
Not basketball.
Right.
Not baseball. Nothing else.
Yep.
Just football.
Their football team will be traveling 20,660 miles this year.
And then to give you a frame of reference, Clemson this year is traveling the least of anybody in the ACC. Their total travel for the season is a little over 2,400 miles, and they will not leave the Eastern time zone.
Crazy.
Not once. That's got, like, my biggest thing with conference realignment with the Big Ten and now the ACC doing it to where you've completely flipped off the map and any type of geographical connection that you had to your conference for the sake of the almighty dollar. And if it works, fine. Then this is college sports now is a fight for survival and for profit and money making. I get it. I get what it is now. But do you really think, in your professional opinion, Mike Gillespie, covered college sports for a long time, that Cal and Stanford, who aren't necessarily going hand over fist in cash with what they generate in football, traveling 20,000 miles and 14,000 miles respectively, in conference play alone, going to do them much good in terms of being able to keep the money they make?
No. And guess who put out this study?
Ooh, who?
A betting website.
Oh,
now,
you don't get anything by them.
Now, why would a betting website be putting numbers out like this? Well, because they look at the human factor of things. And when you have 20-year-olds travel 20,660 miles between September and December.
Oh, and you got to be making sure your classwork's going to be eligible too.
Right. Like, that's a lot of time. You know what's interesting, Elijah? Number 3 on that list is Florida State.
They are the highest team, the highest traditional ACC team.
13,000 miles going through 14 different time zones. Now, does that wear on the Noles over 3 months? Probably.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so could this, like, come December, could we be looking back at, maybe a Noles schedule where they dropped 1 or 2 that they shouldn't have just because of fatigue? I mean, could be, man.
Certainly.
This is not your typical, this is not your daddy's conference anymore. Like, this is a lot of travel involved. The wear and tear is real. And, when you're still trying to manage school, because that's still a thing, like you just said, right? Because, again, they are student athletes after all, quote, student athletes.
Wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly. They still have to get their stuff done. And, that's a huge factor in all of this.
You know what the dumbest and most avoidable part of this whole fiasco with airline travel is within this conference? Not just because you don't have to add Cal and Stanford, stupid enough, but that Florida State, most of their travel on that schedule is in week 1, where they could have just played Georgia Tech in Atlanta. They could have just played Georgia Tech in Tallahassee.
Yeah,
they could have just met each other halfway and played somewhere in between because they're
in. Yeah,
they're playing in Ireland. They could have just met anywhere else in the continental United States.
Yeah.
But they're playing week 1, or technically week 0, whatever, August 24th in Ireland. Why? Are you making that much money going to Ireland? Like, it just seems like an absolute money pit. And the conferences that not only make the most money, but how they spend it is going to be one of the reasons what makes them survive or not. And if you're the ACC and you're already crying and moaning about your TV rights deal and the grant of rights,
right?
But you're making your 2 conference teams that are not more than, a 3-hour drive from each other, play a game in another continent.
To me, the NFL doing this makes sense because of the talk about expansion overseas.
Right. And they're a global organization.
Exactly.
Yes. They make money all over the globe.
Right. The ACC is not a global organization. They're barely a regional organization. So, man, like Notre Dame last year made sense.
Yeah,
right?
Certainly.
Just like, all right, Notre Dame in Ireland, like, okay, that's funny. Like, we get it. Ha, ha, ha. But Florida State and Georgia Tech, like, there's no connection there at all.
None.
Like, the Seminoles weren't going through Ireland to, like, stake their land in Florida. Like, that never happened.
Absolutely
so, like,
not.
what are we even doing here? Like, and it's just a gigantic waste of money. It's intriguing for TV, but it's week 0. Florida State's going to get the eyeballs anyway because they're Florida State, and it's week 0.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they don't have
football.
to spend the extra money to go to Ireland to get the extra eyeballs. They're going to get it already because it's week 0 and it's Florida State.
That's one negative side effect of conference realignment, but there will be some games that we are looking forward to thanks to conference realignment in 2024. We'll get to that when the postgame show continues. Yeah, normally big voice guy there for imaging is correct. This usually is the post-game show with Jay Phillips and Elijah Campbell, but today it is Elijah Campbell and special guest Mike Gillespie filling in for Jay. Back here on the post-game show. But the one thing the big voice guy did get correct is that we are here, 107.5 The Game in Columbia, 105 in Florence, and 100.3 in Myrtle Beach. You can also listen to us on the Game app. Make sure to download that wherever the hell it is you get your apps. I don't care where, just download it already. And we're streaming on the Game TV, powered by Integrated Media, and on YouTube at the Game TV Radio, and that is sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass. True reflection of quality. And we're talking about conference realignment, and it's going to change exactly how we're watching football this year because there's going to be some just really odd matchups and a whole lot of travel.
Yes.
We have a nameless texter here on the text line, powered by Firehouse Subs. It's add the money. And he says, add the money. A commercial jet to charter for Cal has an operating cost of $5,757 per hour. If that number is correct, they're going to be in the plane for a long, long time.
Wow.
Then.
I mean, that's, yeah. So, I mean, you're spending a ton just on that. I mean, yeah, I hope it works out for him. I don't think it's the smartest investment in the world, but hey.
One that reeks of desperation.
Yeah, no, 100%. But no, you're right. I mean, with realignment comes some intriguing football games, games that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily find on a traditional schedule, which is a lot of fun.
Exactly. And while, you know, Stanford at NC State is not going to get me aroused in a football sense by any means, there are a couple in the SEC and Big Ten that when I look at them on the schedule, I am fascinated with for many different reasons and for many different implications, whether it be for the college football playoff or for a trip to a conference championship game. So, Mike, I'll go get to you first.
Yeah.
When you look at the non-traditional conference matchups that we're going to see this year for the first time, what's the one that you are the most excited about?
I'm going to say Georgia, Texas.
Yeah.
I think that one just, I mean, it is two powerhouse football programs going at it now in the same conference. Massive brands. Like, I love that matchup so much. There are a few that Texas by. Florida, Texas is another one.
That'll be a fun one.
But Florida, you know, we've talked about it, right? Like a little down still, right? Like it doesn't have the same ring to it this year as Georgia, Texas. I think the other one that I'm really looking forward to is Southern Cal and Michigan.
That is
in a you know, a Big Ten battle. We've never been able to say that before when those two have played each other, and now it is in a Big Ten matchup. Southern Cal, Michigan. You know, at the Big House. I mean, dude, that is just quintessential, you know, blue blood college football.
Because it's usually a Rose Bowl, right? Like anytime we've seen Southern Cal and Michigan play, it's in Pasadena, and it's at the granddaddy of them all. This ain't the granddaddy of them all, but it's the Big House. And for Southern Cal, which realistically, when you look at the original Pac-12, rest in peace, and you look at the home venues that they would have to play at, outside of Altson Stadium, I can't think of a ton that I would consider menacing. I think the list begins and ends with Altson Stadium and Washington's Stadium in Seattle, when Washington's good, of course. I mean, that environment looked awesome when Oregon played there last year. But Altson Stadium in Eugene is really like the big one. Now they're going to have to play Oregon every other year, and they're going to have to go to places like the Big House. Like winning on the road for Southern Cal is going to get harder than it has ever been.
Playing in front of 107,000 people or whatever it is at the Big House.
Whatever it is, I do know it is the third largest city in Michigan on game day.
Wow.
That stadium is the third largest city.
Wow.
In the entire state. They don't have that in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
So that's a good welcome to the Big Ten moment. Love Georgia, Texas, because that's not only going to be the two best teams in the SEC, those are two of the five best teams in the country. So that game being on ABC is, really appetizing. One in the SEC that I found, too, that I'm really interested in will be Oklahoma at LSU.
Yeah.
And not for the same reason that Southern Cal at Michigan's intriguing, because Oklahoma's played in really good environments. The Big 12 has some good environments. T-Boone Pickens Stadium at Oklahoma State for Bedlam is always rocking. They stormed the field when they beat Oklahoma in what was potentially the last one last year, but this is Oklahoma's first taste of going to LSU.
100%. It is much different to have to play at, say, Tiger Stadium, the Swamp, Neyland. Like, these are the big house. These are coliseums,
really,
of college football, right? Like, and in the Big 12, they never had to play at Texas because, neutral field every single year. So, they're going to get a taste of, okay, yeah, this is what it's like to have to go. And, you've got 90-year-old women flipping you off, as your bus arrives at Tiger Stadium.
Show up at Tiger Stadium and you're like, why does it smell like bourbon and corn dogs? And now you got to play a full football game with a bunch of maniacs painted up purple and gold, yelling the worst obscenities that you didn't think existed.
Tyler and I were talking about this last week, about the toughest stadiums, and the loudest stadiums. And obviously it's very subjective, right? But
exactly.
For me, LSU is probably, number one, number two. I thought that EA Sports list was complete garbage, by the way. Did not like, I'm sure you guys have talked about it ad nauseum. Well, and I've known people who have actually played at Kyle Field, like been on the field, and they're like, there's a lot of people there, but it's not like a wicked, vicious crowd, right? Like you get at LSU or you get at Florida or Tennessee, right? Like, and there are different things that make a stadium sort of stand out, and one of those is, obviously the amount of people that you can pack into one place, but, it's also like, okay, the mindset of your fans, like, are they out for blood, right? Like at really? Florida, they are. At LSU, they are. At Florida, they're like, there's literally no space between the bench and the student section. There's so you're right. Like literally, man, fans are on top of you. That's a different, aspect, right? Yeah. That maybe Oklahoma is just not used to at all. And I mean, correct us if we're wrong. If you're an Oklahoma fan, like tell us where we're wrong. But like, I don't think there's any comparison.
Yeah, absolutely not. If you have any thoughts, too, feel free to weigh in on which new conference, they used to be non-conference matchups, but which new conference matchup you're looking forward to. 803-404-6100, the Firehouse Subs text line. We did get a Go Tigers, but spelled Geaux on there.
LSU fan.
That's right. Bourbon and corn dogs can spell through the text. But I need to find that old post from a long time ago. That one was an absolute doozy. But we're going to get into this. We're going to get into a whole lot more this hour, too, including what sporting events have ever made you cry? I had to go into deep thought, go deep into the memory on that one. We'll get into that later on this hour. A whole lot more as the post-game show continues. I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Mike Gillespie filling in for Jay Phillips. We'll be right back.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you here, they're causing some issues on the roadways this Friday afternoon. And the good news is we only have two, knock on wood, and one has actually just been cleared. So if you were experiencing traffic over on 26 eastbound before the Columbia Avenue exit 91, that has since been cleared, and traffic is moving significantly more smoothly through that area. We still have two around, one in Richland County on Assembly Street near Calhoun Street, and another one near West Columbia on 26 eastbound just after exit 116 at I-77. And what we're talking about right now is new conference realignment matchups that never in our lifetime would we think would be conference football games, but it's the new reality.
Yep.
And this is the first year in our new reality in the world of college football, but it's not all that bad given some of these matchups and how intriguing they're going to be. I'm Elijah Campbell. Mike Gillespie in for Jay Phillips today. Jay on vacation, hitting vacay a little bit early. Congratulations, Jay. I will be on vacation for a couple of days because we're not going to be here 4th of July. So
Good for you.
So we're not here 4th of July.
Yes.
We're not here the next day. So I will be I'll be in St. Augustine.
Oh, I love St. Augustine.
Weekend.
Oh my God.
I'm so pumped.
You ever been?
Oh yeah. So I'll be staying with a couple of my best friends, and they've lived in St. Augustine for over a decade now. And when I was in college, my birthday's always in the first week of March, which in school was spring break. So every spring break we would go. We always had a place to stay. We'd hang out in St. Augustine for a few days and go back up to back to school. But turned 21 in St. Augustine. It's one of my favorite cities.
Great town
in the country.
Spurrier just sold his house there.
Really?
A couple years ago. Yeah.
Oh man.
Close to $5 million, I think.
You know what?
A little bit.
If I scrounge out some quarters, I could probably. I look under the couch, see if there's any loose change there. Maybe I can have some hopes of.
You could get 5,000.
Purchasing that. Yeah, that's maybe. We'll see. I'll have to look long and hard to be able to find enough to be able to acquire.
Yeah, St. Augustine's that's a good town. If you're listening out there and you need a good place to go for the summer, that's a good vacation spot. Crescent Beach there, North Florida, not super far away from South Carolina. Yeah, that's good.
Not super far away. If you're a history buff, I'm a huge history buff. That is the
oldest city in the United States.
Exactly, and there's just so much to do. And if you like alligators, they have a nice alligator farm.
Yeah, yes, they do.
One of the coolest zoo experiences.
Wrestling some gators.
That's right, wrestling gators. People do that for a living there. It's fantastic. And going back to the topic, we mentioned a couple games. We already mentioned Georgia at Texas, Oklahoma at LSU, and one that I'm really intrigued in. This is in the Big Ten, and this is going to be for both schools. This is going to be a moment of, so you really wanted this. Ohio State at Oregon, October 12th.
Yeah.
They'll both be preseason top 5, I'm sure.
Yep, that could be fun.
Ohio State might be preseason number 1.
Sure. Football games are won at the line of scrimmage, and the thing about Oregon for me has always been, when they go up against these monster schools, right? Their inability to compete at the line. Can they finally do it this year?
It's the ultimate measuring stick game.
It is. That seems really fun to me too. That's intriguing. That's definitely intriguing. Two big brands, obviously, and then it's at Oregon, isn't it?
It's at Oregon.
So even better, man.
So Ohio State, did you really want to add these guys in the conference to fly across the country to go play in a stadium that is incredibly loud, that is very comparable to other nasty environments that you get in the best of the Big Ten and SEC, against a team that's going to be top 5, against a team that was a legitimate chance to win a national title? Who I think Dan Lanning is like one of the top 3 or 4 best coaches in America right now.
Yes, 100%.
I think if I were Alabama,
nailed it.
I would have absolutely. I'm sure they did, make calls to Dan Lanning's agent, but I would have made them tell me no enough times to where they had to block my number. I'd have been that persistent. I would not take no for an answer until you block my number or file a restraining order, whatever came first.
And if you're Dan Lanning, why not take Alabama over Oregon? Why would you want to stay at Oregon when you could go to the only downside about taking Alabama right now is that you're the guy who has to follow the guy. And 90% of the time, it does not work out well. Now, I will say it's worked out okay, you know, the last couple of years, right? Like Lincoln Riley worked out. But like Oklahoma, that's the thing too, man. Like Oklahoma has nailed their football searches.
Yes.
Like I can't think of one in my lifetime. I can't think of one bad Oklahoma football coach.
Yeah, truly.
Like, I mean so I guess that's sort of the...
I guess, right before 2000. But, I mean, once 2000.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess that's a little bit of the exception, right?
But it's definitely the exception because their entire history is them being dominant.
Well, and then poor Will Muschamp, right? You look at a guy like that. Not poor. That's the wrong word to use with Will Muschamp.
Especially financially. That is, you'll never be described as that.
Yes, but you know the tough part for him was that he had to follow two legends, right? Like, so he had to follow Steve Spurrier at South Carolina. That sucks. He had to follow Urban Meyer at Florida. Not an easy gig. So, you know, it doesn't work out. You know, I would say it doesn't work out 90% of the time when you're following the guy. So I guess Dan Lanning choosing to stay at Oregon, I guess, makes sense.
Certainly.
Like, if you look at it from that perspective. But, I mean, Alabama's certainly a miles ahead, like better football program.
Moral of the story, you have a legendary head coach that retires. Do not hire Will Muschamp. If we learned anything from this segment, just don't hire Will Muschamp. But out of all the other matchups too, there's one more that I want to get to before we end up hitting the break here in a couple of minutes. And this one, not from a football standpoint, because the games we've mentioned are going to be fantastic football games.
Yeah.
Like the product on the field is going to be rocking. The product on the field is why these schools made this jump to begin with.
Sure.
But this game that I have highlighted on October 19th is an ugly side effect of all of this, right? Because you weren't getting Southern Cal to the Big Ten without UCLA. And on October 19th, UCLA has to play at Rutgers in New Jersey, in Piscataway, New Jersey. It's going to be a little chilly. It's going to be a 5,000-mile round trip for UCLA.
Sure.
And part of me hopes that UCLA is absolutely miserable. And this is going to be did you really want to do this? Is this really the thing you wanted to do with your athletic department? Type deal, especially if they lose to Rutgers, because then it'd be really funny. So I hope they're cold. I hope they lose. And this will be their first time playing in the Eastern time zone since 2019.
Wow, that's a stat. Since 2019?
They have not played in the Eastern time zone since 2019 when they played Cincinnati on the road.
Did they win?
I did not see. If they won or not.
Interesting.
I need to go back though for certain purposes.
That's a good stat. I like that a lot. I mean, 5 years. Wow. But I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, when would they have?
Yeah. I mean, they're not doing it frequently.
Right.
And there's really before 2014, there weren't many teams in the Big Ten, I guess, playing in the Eastern time zone. Michigan, Ohio State, but like your Iowas. Minnesota Minnesota's not in the Eastern time zone. That's too far west.
No, that's central.
Yeah, they're central. Yeah, the Lord's time zone, as I will always attest to, as being the best one. But I mean, UCLA hadn't had to come all the way out to the East Coast, or at least in that time zone since 2019. Wow. That's going to be a rude awakening. That's going to be the first time that they're going to have one of these just ridiculous matchups. I'll watch it out of curiosity. I'll watch it because I think it would be really cool to see Rutgers bludgeon them because they had to make that flight and make them really second guess whether or not this is something that was really wise. Or do they just wipe their tears and tape up their bruises with all of the millions of dollars that they're going to be making in addition to joining the Big Ten?
Well, the presidents will.
The presidents will.
For sure.
Yeah. And maybe the quarterback might get a little extra because of it. Maybe Ethan Garbers might get a nice In-N-Out burger NIL deal because of it.
I would love
to do that.
An In-N-Out NIL deal. That would be amazing.
And before we leave the show today, in the last segment of the show, we do have prepared, we are going to draft, snake style, like a fantasy football draft, our favorite fast food burger places. For those who might not be wanting to maybe grill out, even though that's one of the best parts about 4th of July, but in honor of the burgers that will be consumed, which is that's less than a week from now. It'll be next Thursday, 4th of July.
Yes.
So we will be drafting our favorite burgers before we log off for the day completely, ending the entire week on a bang. And I have a feeling In-N-Out is going to be high on both of our draft boards.
100%.
Very high on both of them. But coming up next, this is a topic that Mike texted me, and I haven't thought about this in a long time. As a sports fan, I have not talked about this or thought about this in quite a while. Is the last time a sporting event made you cry? Tears of joy, tears of absolute sorrow or misery? Can't be all the above. That'd be very strange. That'd be quite the overwhelming feeling. But the last time a sporting event pushed you to tears, we will discuss. Feel free to weigh in. 803-404-6100 to weigh in by phone or through the Firehouse Subs text line. This is the Postgame Show. I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Mike Gillespie. We'll be back. If you are a fan of craft beer like myself and you haven't done this already, I highly suggest you get to it. Because I know you like a good deal. I like a good deal. Our man Mike Gillespie, who's filling in for Jay Phillips, likes a good deal.
Who doesn't like a good deal?
Who doesn't?
Come
Universally,
on.
across the board. And the craft beer card, which is
the best deal,
has never been more back. It's back, and it has never been more back. You can spend $30 at a brewery at 12 craft beer locations. And if you do the math, it's a $360 value.
I was just about to say that. It was $360 value.
And you know how much you pay for it, Mike Gillespie?
100.
Over under 80.5. What do you think?
Wow. Under.
And you will be correct.
Yes.
Under at $79.
Wow, what a deal.
$360 value. Only 79 buckaroos.
Wow.
Good for 12 different craft beer locations.
Tell me more.
And one of the coolest things that I got gifted one of these at the end of the year because they expire at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So if you like to give yourself more time to be able to use these craft beer cards, go ahead and do it now.
I like to use it all at once.
Because you know what? No, you know when I got my craft beer cards?
When?
Like December 20th. And it's like you get 2 of these.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Nice.
And it's like, all right, well, I got to find a couple days to really go at it. And you can enjoy it a lot more.
Hammer them home.
Yeah, exactly, because when I get a deal, I like to use it. I don't like to feel like I haven't utilized something, especially a gift to its maximum potential. Mm-hmm. So I definitely tried that, the craft beer card. No regrets. I'd do it again. But, if you have the option to do it for a couple months and space it out a little bit, maybe one a weekend, that's 12 weekends of discounted craft beer. Throwing it out there. Just a suggestion.
It's a lot of solid weekends of craft beer.
And those weekends will not make you cry.
No, good segue.
It is a segue. It is certainly one, and that's one I have planted on and taking it because you mentioned to me this morning.
Yes.
You posed the question, like, when was the last time I cried over a sporting event?
Yeah.
And I had a couple that came to mind. And I know you've thrown that out with your Facebook following.
I did.
And you've gotten some really good responses. So I'm really curious to hear, what is it that pokes at the heartstrings of the South Carolina sports fan?
That's a good question. Let me bring it up real quick. Yeah, the question is, when was the last time a sporting event made you cry, right? And Michael Sawyer says when Carolina beat Clemson in 2022 in the Palmetto Bowl, tears of joy.
Okay.
So Matt says 2019 Masters when Tiger won, saw his kids. He says that I cried and I called my mom. She was watching. She cried. Everybody was crying. Julie says I've never cried from a sporting event. I don't believe you.
Soulless.
Don't believe you.
You're soulless, Julie.
Let's see. Brent says 97 when the Cleveland Indians won a division.
Big deal.
First time in 30-plus years. Lee says after South Carolina men lost in the Final Four.
Okay.
That's a good one, too.
That's a mixture of maybe some like appreciation tears and sadness because it's over.
Yep.
And maybe then some smiling because it happened.
Joe, there are a lot of these, but I'm just going to read the South Carolina ones. Joe says when South Carolina lost to Navy in 1984. They're only lost that year, I believe. Or maybe only regular season loss.
I think it was.
Yeah, because they would have gone on to play in the national championship that year. Yeah. So no, for sure. This is a good one. When was the last time you cried because of a sporting event? Let's be real here on a Friday. I certainly I can remember crying when Marcus Lattimore got injured against Tennessee. That was a big one. When Florida lost to Alabama in 2008 in the SEC championship, when I saw Tebow crying, that made me tear up a little bit. Certainly some emotional moments over the years in sports.
Absolutely. We have someone calling in on our phone line, 803-404-6100, if you would like to weigh in. Our man Steven's called in to give us his instance, the last time he cried, whether it be tears of joy, sorrow, whatever, anytime the tear ducts got working over a sporting event. Steven, what's on your mind?
Hey, guys. How are y'all? Steven from Lexington.
What's up?
2010, it was a NASCAR Xfinity race. Dale Jr. ran the number 3 blue and yellow Wrangler car and won the race. And enjoyed like a little baby watching that. Guys, we love y'all, and we appreciate everything y'all do. Thank y'all for being the home of the Gamecocks, and I'm going to hang up and listen, all right?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for your call, Steve. And yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. And I like that because it might not be like quite tied to a team per se, but there's the storyline of Dale Jr. driving the car his dad did, winning a race, and like there's a lot of good human interest tears watching something like that.
100%.
You know? Like that's pretty damn cool. I have not thought of that, but I was an unexpected answer that I totally get.
One that Daniel hits me up and says Kobe Bryant's last game.
Oh man,
at Staples.
Yeah,
that was
I was definitely a little watery.
I think that's one for me where I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but when you're watching something in sports and all of a sudden you feel your age and mortality a little bit. And Kobe was one of those guys that I grew up watching, you know, people my age, I'm 35, you know, people my age grew up watching, obviously. When he hung it up for good, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that is an icon of my, you know, childhood who will never play basketball again. You know, I would say Kobe's death too. I mean, I don't think I cried over that, but certainly a sad, sad day.
Oh, I was... Kobe Bryant was my childhood idol. Yeah. I loved Kobe Bryant. The reason I am a Los Angeles Laker fan was because I would watch Kobe and Shaq in the early 2000s, and I played NBA 2K3 religiously. We got that for Christmas one year, and I think I played every day for a few years. I was obsessed with that game, and Kobe Bryant became my favorite player.
100%. I don't know if there was or will be a better duo in the NBA ever.
No.
Than Kobe and Shaq.
Not a more dominant one like that.
Chicago fans might say, Pippen and MJ. I could see that too, but I just...
Because they did win two three-peats.
But
get it.
I'm coming at it from just two totally different styles of play, completely different body types, personalities. Everything. I don't know if we will ever see a more, let's just say, iconic duo in sports than Kobe and Shaq. But that was a good one too. Kobe's last game, for sure. And there are a couple more on Facebook. Let's see, real quick. When Tennessee won the College World Series this year, says Teresa.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I know my dad definitely did. He wouldn't admit it. I called him after the game, and he was breaking a little bit. I could tell.
I bet.
I could tell. Got a whole lot more of these to get into. We're going to talk about this the rest of the show. 5 o'clock news coming up next. We'll get back to these and a whole lot more as hour number 3 of the postgame show comes up. I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Mike Gillespie. We'll be right back. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways this afternoon. We'll start with one on Assembly Street near Calhoun Street. Got another one on Bush River Road at I-26. And another accident recently reported on Dutch Fork Road at Highway 76 near 176 and Broad River Road. We also still have one on 20 westbound before Broad River Road near exit 65. And in Lexington County, we have two to get to. One's on 26 eastbound over at I-77 exit 116. That one's been causing issues for about an hour or so. And lastly, we have one on I-20 eastbound between exit 64 and 65 near Broad River Road. That's right. It's 5 o'clock. And as we do every Friday, or every day, not just Friday, 5 o'clock, we give you the news. Some interesting stuff going on last night, specifically when it comes to drafts and maybe the country's most famous case of nepotism in the last month. One, LeBron James Jr. was selected, shockingly, by the Los Angeles Lakers, who his dad LeBron plays for. Here's how it sounded.
With the 55th pick in the 2024 NBA Draft, the Los Angeles Lakers select Bronny James from the University of Southern California.
Thank you, Mark Tatum, the deputy commissioner of the NBA, as he always does, announcing the second-round picks. And look, it has been a pretty contentious discourse on the internet about how people feel about Bronny James. And I'm going to do one thing that I know Jay Phillips does not like to do, and that's editorialize on the news here. And this is giving us topics to talk about. This is the biggest news really in sports last night. We're reaching that kind of slow part of the sports calendar.
Sure.
And never in my life have I ever thought there would be a second-round draft pick in the NBA draft this much discussed outside of like draft Twitter circles, which can be pretty interesting circles to be on in general. But look, I know nepotism's rampant. I know, Adrian Wojnarowski had, this to say about nepotism and its, place in the NBA and just how rampant it is.
I don't want to hear these charges, people talking about nepotism. No, the NBA is full of nepotism. Full of it. The ownership level, front offices, coaching. Yep. I don't want to hear it all of a sudden because of Bronny James's father plays for the Lakers. Right. It is rampant in this league. That is
And yeah, it is rampant in the league, but it's never been this highly publicized. I also don't know if it's as this highly damaging to somebody in Bronny's instance, because look, ultimately the only person I feel bad for is Bronny himself. And I've kind of likened it to him being the kid that nobody likes at school, and his birthday party's coming up, and the only reason people are there is because his parents or other parents made their kids go. So while it's a celebration, it seems very artificial because, look, you're not fooling anybody. Somebody that scored 4 points at Southern Cal is probably going in the transfer portal to play at Duquesne or to play at Charleston Southern or insert, mid-major program here, right? They're not going to the NBA. They're not getting drafted. It feels artificial. He already has the weight of the world on his shoulders, being quite literally named LeBron James Jr. It's going to be hard enough as is. And even though he did get drafted, he is going to be in the NBA. It has to. I wonder if he feels that it's artificial. And I feel worse for him than anybody else because he didn't really ask for any of this.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's LeBron James' son. So what I would say about the nepotism, right? Like, yeah, it's rampant in the NBA, but this is the son of the most recognizable basketball star on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, this is a different sphere of nepotism, right? Like, yeah, it's not like, some, random coach, got the coaching position because of his dad or whatever. Like, yeah, okay, fine. Like, that happens everywhere, right, in life. This is the biggest star, one of the biggest stars in all of sports, by the way, but certainly the biggest star in the NBA, and his son. It's just a different level. And he didn't deserve a second-round pick either. Like, he didn't
honest with ourselves.
At all. Like, 4 points a game isn't going to do it. It's cool because he had some health issues, like health scare a couple years ago. So it's cool to hear his name called, like, in that regard, and, like, more power to him. Like, that's super cool, man. Like, you were able to overcome some obstacles health-wise there. Like, awesome. But is he deserving of a second-round pick? No, not at all. That's why we're talking about it, because he doesn't deserve it, number one. Number two, he is the son of the biggest icon in the NBA.
Exactly.
Let's say this, too. The NBA loves it because people are talking about the second round of the NBA draft, which you said, that never happens.
I've never been this part of, or I've been a part of this many discussions over the 55th overall pick in the NBA draft. Usually people are turned their TV off by now, and I get how a lot of people. I've gotten so many people reach out to me or talk to me about this and say, it's the 55th pick. Like, who cares? It's harmless, and sure it can be. My thing is, the only thing that really rubs me the wrong way is just that it plays out so publicly, right? Like, if my dad, for instance, like, in the real world, a lot of nepotism happens and it's quiet, right? My dad worked for the Tennessee Department of Transportation for almost 40 years, retired from the Department of Transportation.
Yeah.
And if I decided I didn't want to do sports radio anymore and I just gave him a call, I'm like, Dad, I think I'm really interested in infrastructure. Even though I don't have an engineering degree or anything like that, anything that would qualify me to even be in the building, my dad could probably get me a job doing a bare minimum type deal at the Tennessee Department of Transportation.
Sure.
My younger brother is my older sister's paralegal. My sister's an attorney in Nashville, and my younger brother is her paralegal. He had no training in it, but they needed somebody who was willing to do the pencil pushing and doing the work. And after doing it for a while, he ultimately gained the trust, and he works as her paralegal now. And it's quiet nepotism. Nobody's going to want to talk on a sports talk radio show about Lucas Campbell working for Hannah Garrett being her paralegal, and he only got it because that's her brother.
Right.
But this played out so publicly on a global scale that the pressure is already bad enough on that kid. It got to the point where the reports of Rich Paul calling teams and saying, don't draft this kid because if you do, he'll play in Australia.
Right.
Is embarrassing.
That's the biggest point in all of this, right? Like, there is nepotism that makes sense. Okay. Yes. So when we were force-fed, no offense, but when we were force-fed Joe Buck, okay, he's Jack Buck's son. Yes. All right. But guess what, man? Joe Buck grew up around a broadcast booth. There was no one more prepared to take over that role than Joe Buck. And guess what? I think he's phenomenal at it. You might have your opinions on Joe Buck, and that's perfectly fine.
Right.
In my opinion, I think he's a great broadcaster. I think he came in as a great broadcaster, right? There are things like that in the nepotism sphere that make sense, and that was one of them. Bronny James being drafted is purely because his last name is James and his dad is LeBron.
It's just so public, and the public reports of him turning down invites to go work out for other teams. Like, it would probably have benefited him to go work out for other teams.
100%.
Because wouldn't it benefit him if let's say, the Milwaukee Bucks invite him to a workout and he would get to go work out for them and he just blows them away with the workout. We see this all the time where someone goes into a workout and they're like, oh my God, this kid looks a whole lot better than what we saw on the tape, than what the numbers show. We really like what we have. And it would benefit him more to be taken like 35 if that were the case. But the fact that he didn't work out for anybody else, the Phoenix Suns, whatever, but he was invited to a whole lot more workouts, didn't take them. His agent, who's supposed to be representing other players in the draft too, was busy making calls to teams saying, don't draft this kid. He will play on Australia instead. And the fact that his dad was also saying, nope, whatever LeBron or Bronny's going to get, it's going to be merit-based. We're not pressuring Los Angeles to pick him at all, while also making his buddy the head coach and then drafting his son. The fact that it was that we got this whole facade of that this isn't this way, I'd almost rather appreciated during the process than being like, yeah, we want Bronny because we want to make our star happy. Just be honest.
Honest, dude.
Yeah.
Honesty. Goes back to what we first talked about when we started this program today. Schloss, if he had just been honest in his press conference that night. Now, you don't have to tell us the whole truth, but you don't have to lie about it.
Don't insult our intelligence.
Don't lie. Don't insult our intelligence, right? And this seems like, the James family is completely insulting the collective intelligence here. And it's, we can see straight through it.
Yeah, certainly. And so we'll see. I'm a Los Angeles Laker fan, man. If Bronny James ends up becoming an all-star in a couple of years and gets to stick around once his dad leaves, no one will be more happy than your boy.
If he gains 100 pounds and grows 6 inches, then absolutely.
He's a real late bloomer. It becomes a real possibility.
But I don't see that happening.
I don't either. I'm a lot more excited about the Dalton Connect pick. I think that can actually help you right away. And one team that needs a lot of help right away, especially when it comes to not getting kicked out of games and hurting your team with stupid in-game decisions, Team USA. I know Jay Phillips does not feel great about this because they lost to Panama last night in Copa America. A red card early on in the game put the USA at a disadvantage for the rest of the game. Panama scores the ultimate winning goal, and now Team USA is in a little bit of trouble, and America's favorite, or maybe not so favorite, soccer analyst Alexi Lawless had some harsh criticism about the team.
I mean, this one hurts, obviously, but there's a strange part of me that said, you know what? All chips in, all right? We talked so much about this tournament being an assessment of this team, an assessment of head coach Greg Berhalter relative to getting out of the group and playing against the likes of Colombia and Brazil. Well, you know what? That challenge and that assessment and that ultimate assessment is now going to happen in the third game against Uruguay. And they better be up for it, because if they do not go through, Greg Berhalter is going to lose his job, and rightfully and fairly so. But this is a situation that this team, including Greg Berhalter, have created for themselves. Now find a way to get out of it.
Yeah, they're in trouble. They're in a hole, and they got Uruguay coming up. And Uruguay pretty good at soccer. I don't know if they make it out of the group stage. It does seem like Greg Berhalter is on his way out. Just another very unfortunate event in U.S. men's soccer. The opposite of usually what happens with the women. Tough draw. I know. Yeah, poor Jay Phillips is not loving that. And last soccer news a bit we have, again, slow sports schedule here in late June. I'll first pose this question. Mike, have you ever had a promise to, like when you were a kid, if you were ever playing sports, did you ever have like a parent or grandparent promise you that you can either go like Pizza Hut or, get something if you do well in a sporting event?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think Pizza Hut, actually.
The pizza buffet at Pizza Hut?
Yeah.
All-time banger.
Yeah. God, what else? Pub subs used to be a thing.
I still heavy on the
pub subs. Yeah.
Yeah, as an adult. But my grandfather, when I first started playing basketball in the third grade, would give me $1 for every point I scored.
Yeah, there we go.
Which is a really good way to make a third grader play like Dion Waiters. But I was absolutely firing away. But nothing can compare to what Georgian billionaire Bidzina Ivanishvili promised the Georgian national team. Yes, thank you. Yeah, all over the mic. But the Georgian national team, not SEC, but the Georgian national team who beat Portugal 2-0, he made a promise, initially offering the payment of $30 million of their currency, I believe is Georgian lari is how you say that, but $10.7 million in American dollars before the tournament on the condition that Georgia reached the knockout stage.
Wow.
And he founded the ruling Georgian Dream Party and is now considered its honorary chairman. But after they beat Portugal and punched their ticket to the knockout round, they all got over the equivalent of $10 million American dollars. That could buy you a lot of trips to the Pizza Hut buffet.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pub subs.
Yeah, that will. That'll buy you That'll buy you 3 years of Jim Schlossnagle at Texas.
It could with like half a year to spare.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
You can even get like the non-conference slate.
Maybe the buyout
out of the
after
way.
3 years.
5 o'clock news brought to you as always by Integrated Media. College football season is coming up quickly. Whether you're watching an SEC on ABC game or a really weird Big Ten matchup between UCLA and Rutgers, if you need improvements to your home theater system, our friends at Integrated Media will hook you up. They've helped Jay. They'll be helping me in the future. And they can do wonders for you in terms of how you enjoy your game day experience. We posed a question before the end of the last hour. What sporting events have brought you to tears? Mike and I have experiences that brought us to tears. We have a couple of hits on the Firehouse Subs text line. We'll get into all of that and more as the post-game show rolls on.
Just go to iTunes or Google Play and download the Game app. Sure, you may no longer be with that person anymore.
The emotion in sports, what brings you to tears. The best part about it, I love talking about statistics, strategies, all of this, recruiting, roster construction all day. One of the reasons why we like talking about this, Mike Gillespie, sitting here for Jay Phillips, is because sports make us feel a certain way. And there are certain events that get you in the utmost of your feelings. We're talking about that here on the Postgame Show. I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Mike Gillespie. And we are talking about getting real with ourselves when it comes to sporting events that have helped us get real with ourselves. And before we get to the plethora of responses we got here on the Firehouse Subs text line, 803-404-6100, we'll go ahead and get to some of ours. And one of mine was Kobe's last game as a Laker. Yeah. It was definitely, I watched that at a music venue that I was working at the time, working security. We closed the place down as fast as we could because we knew the game was on. My supervisor, also a Kobe Bryant fan, Laker fan, and we made sure as soon as that concert ended, we did not give them any time to chill. We got them out of there. Right? We nope, everybody's got to go home. Nope. Well, place is closing down early tonight. Closed it down and sat in the empty bar area and had it on the TV and watched the last two quarters of the game. And after he scored 60. I could feel the waterworks coming a little bit because, like I said, I started watching basketball at the age of 6, and that was the player I attached myself to. So just to know that part of my life was over with hit me pretty good.
I may be more surprised that you worked in security.
I know. I'm not very physically imposing, and this is before I even grew the beard. I couldn't grow facial hair at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a clean-shaven, goofy-looking dude, not very physically imposing. But
behind the line.
Hey, you're right. He's not real. I don't know why. I didn't sound like Mickey Mouse, but I definitely wasn't scaring anybody. That's for sure. But I knew how to spot a fake ID in the state of Tennessee. It was pretty easy to do. So, and they just needed somebody to do it, and that would be willing to do the job. So I did that for a while. It was pretty good money. Paid for college that way. But
how many people did you kick out?
Oh my God! Yeah, on average, so. If I was at a larger venue, like the Ascend Amphitheater is a pretty big venue downtown, you maybe kick out 1 or 2.
Okay.
Because it's a larger venue. You can get away with stuff a little easier.
Yeah.
You know. But at one of the venues I was at on a more nightly basis was called the Cannery Ballroom, very intimate venue. And usually if you do something you're not supposed to, you're getting caught. Or if you are acting up, a bartender can just wave us over and say, hey, this guy's being an a-hole. Like, let's get him out of here. So, I mean, that was more maybe 5 or 6 times a night. There's some more unruly actors that would be going on. The acts aren't as big. Like, Hall & Oates wasn't playing at the Cannery.
Right.
But there were some where it's like, oh, it's a local band. All their buddies are there, and they're here to raise hell. And, and so sometimes things would get out of hand, breaking up more fights, stuff like that. A lot more intoxication. There was one night, where we kicked a woman out. She couldn't stand up, and she ends up dropping a glass and stepping on it with her bare feet. And somebody who just not like the look of blood, guess who got to clean it up?
You.
Me.
Fun.
Yeah, didn't love that.
Yikes.
Made me cry, but.
Made you cry. Yeah.
But.
Not a sporting event.
No. But that same building was where I watched Kobe Bryant's last game. Made me cry tears of joy, or I guess maybe a nostalgia. And the last time I cried over, like sad tears over a football game, 2006 NFC Championship game, my beloved New Orleans Saints. After Reggie Bush scored a touchdown to make it a 2-point game in the second half, it was ugly. The Bears kicked their ass en route to a 39-14 game, and that entire second half, on the phone with my dad, on a flip phone, my dad trying to console me, saying, buddy, they'll be back. Reggie Bush is young. Drew Brees is there. Like, they'll be back, trying his best to console me. And I wasn't having it. It was completely torn up.
I bet.
It was a crushing loss at the time.
I bet.
At the time. At
the time.
Because the Minneapolis Miracle happened.
Was that the last time that you cried? No, because Kobe.
Yeah.
Other than that, was that the last time?
I think so. So. And I want to say that was... and we do have one texter who we'll get to. He mentioned, watching a game with his son, and one of the reasons why I was so emotional was, he was watching a game. Clemson go to the Elite Eight. We got to go to that with his son.
Oh, cool.
And I was living pretty far away at the time when Tennessee beat Alabama a couple of years ago. Like, I'm not as big a Tennessee fan as I was growing up. Working in this job, it really curbs a lot of, like, your fandom. But I don't get upset when they win, and because I know it means a lot to my family members. And I've been watching games with my dad and my granddad forever. And when my dad called me crying after they beat Alabama, it got me a little bit. You know, like I didn't cry originally watching the game. I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, they just beat Alabama. Very good for them. That's great. But then when my dad called, that was pretty cool.
No, for sure. So I was in 2019, I was actually in Augusta at the Masters covering Tiger and his win. That got me a little bit.
Especially when he hugged his dad afterward. Right?
Yeah.
No, that wasn't the one yet.
Yep.
He hugged his son.
Backstory there, we were actually waiting for Dustin Johnson because DJ finished second behind Tiger. Okay, DJ being Columbia native, right? Irmo native.
Dutch Fork legend.
Yep. So back in my local TV days, you know, we'd always have to get DJ. He doesn't show up to talk to the media, by the way. Didn't happen. But we're all waiting, probably 100 yards away from the 18th, and we can see Tiger. You know, he wins. He walks up. That gave me chills, man. A little tear.
Oh, that's awesome.
A little tear going through, just because, say what you will about Tiger, but it certainly had to go through a lot of rehabilitation to get back to where he was. So appreciated the hard work that he put in and being able to to see his family get to watch that, right? Like, because growing up, his kids, right, like, they had never really seen him win much of anything of significance, right? Like, right. I mean, they had always heard stories, but they had never seen it in person.
Like, Charlie would have been really young whenever the whole thing happened.
Yeah, I mean, and this was 5 years ago. Charlie's, 17, I guess now? Is that right? Yeah. So he would have been 12, 11, when his dad won in 2019 at Augusta. Yeah. So, I mean, so they hadn't seen it. So that was a cool part for me. Marcus Lattimore blowing out his knee, against Tennessee. That was terrible. Yeah. That was one that kind of got me when Florida lost to Alabama in 2008 in the SEC championship game when Tebow cried. That stunk. It just kind of felt like it was over. Like the greatest run maybe in Florida football history, aside from those Spurrier days. It just kind of came to a screeching halt in Atlanta. That was tough, too. I'm trying to think of what else. When the Marlins won in 2003, that was pretty emotional, too, just knowing that
was my team.
Yeah. Like, a lot of my family, my grandfather, Marlins fan as well. So that was cool. But those were some of mine that I kind of thought of, along with Kobe as well. Yeah. Kobe's last game certainly was, pretty emotional too.
Certainly a sentimental one. And we'll get into some of these too. Some of these are SEC based, so I will include some of these in the drive around the SEC. We're going to flex some rules a little bit, but some non-SEC ones. We do have a Tiger winning the Masters a few years back, said hands down from a nameless texter. We have somebody that goes, anytime the Celtics win a championship, by the way, they're not tears of joy. Kindly, that's from Bayou Bengal. You know what, brother? Amen. Yeah,
for sure.
They are not tears of joy. Don't necessarily enjoy those. Here's one, too, that, I absolutely can see. A nameless texter said when DeMar Hamlin went down, full of tough guys crying.
100%.
Have to admit, I welled up. Yeah. Oh, that was terrible. Yeah. That was scary. That was one of those, like, you're nervous, and it's not because of a football game. It's because of something significantly worse, and you just the worst pit feeling in your stomach that something really bad has happened. Yeah. And that you're watching it, unfold. Absolutely happened for me in that game.
And it's bad to, working in TV all of these years like I have, being around live sporting events, it's bad when TV doesn't know what to do, when the announcers don't know what to do, when it's taken so long that at that point they've already burned through their commercials, and it's like, what do we do now? So that sort of realization, for me was like, oh wow, this is
serious.
This guy's not moving. Like, this is bad. Then obviously seeing all the players, and coaches hug and cry and pray. And yeah, I mean, that was definitely a tough night for sure. That's a good one. I didn't even think about that, but yes, that was an emotional night for sure.
803-404-6100 to weigh in. We'll do a quick drive around the SEC with some SEC notes and some SEC memories that have made some of our audience cry in the past. We'll also continue this moving forward and maybe get into a little bit of a burger draft to round out Friday's shows. You're listening to the Postgame Show. I'm Elijah Campbell, Mike Gillespie filling in for Jay Phillips. We'll be back. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accents to get to you here in the Midlands that are causing some issues on the roadways. We'll start with a pretty big one, an accident that's got the left lane completely blocked on I-26 eastbound over at the Harbison Boulevard exit 103. Traffic is at a standstill at the moment. We have other accidents to get to, one on Bush River Road at I-26, another one on Dutch Fork Road Highway 76 near US 176 and Broad River Road, another one on I-20 eastbound at Monticello Road near exit 68, and another one on 20 eastbound. This one, though, past exit 64 near exit 65. So traffic's moving a little bit slowly through those exits. And lastly, we have one on 20 west as well, just before Broad River Road exit 65. As we do every day, 5:30, it means it's time for us to get into our hypothetical vehicles. We're not literally driving around the SEC, but we're going to take a hypothetical drive around the SEC, including the NBA draft results for the conference, maybe compared to others, and the SEC sporting events that have made us cry as well. We'll go ahead and start with the NBA draft. It concluded yesterday, right as we went off air. I think the Bronny James pick, which was 55 out of 58 picks, happened at like 6:02, 6:03, something like that. And all in all, the Southeastern Conference only had 2 teams represented in the NBA draft, 4 SEC players taken. Mike Gillespie, who's in for Jay Phillips today, there were almost as many French players taken in the first 6 picks, 3, as there were SEC players taken in both rounds, 4. 3 Kentucky players and Dalton Knecht from Tennessee. So I think it's just a down year maybe in terms of NBA talent production for the SEC, considering they were pretty good collegiately this year. Yeah,
I think so. Honestly, I was surprised that it took so long for Dalton Knecht to get drafted. I thought he was a steal.
Yeah, at 23, they treat him like he's 45.
I've watched him play in person a few times. And the last time I saw him play was in Columbia, Tennessee, and South Carolina. And that man took over the game. And he was on another level. That is a steal in the draft. Much better pick than Bronny for the Lakers.
I think Dalton Knecht will actually be on the floor this season.
Yes. He is going to wear the number 4, by the way. So he will be Knecht 4. That's real. That's a real thing. That is a real thing.
Oh, my God.
So how about that? So, I'm super excited to watch him play at the next level. But, I think kind of a down year in overall talent.
Yeah, it's in terms of raw numbers. Kentucky still does what Kentucky does, getting 3 players. And ironically enough, the only guy that started more than 5 games was the guy who was taken in the second round when Antonio Reeves was taken by the Magic. But Rob Dillingham taken at 8 to the Spurs, only to have a proposed trade to the Timberwolves. He started only 1 game last year for Kentucky, and Reed Sheppard taken 3rd overall by the Rockets. He started a whopping 5 games for Kentucky. Clearly the 2 best players on that team, and, well, they did not start on the floor. So, way to go, Coach Cal. But the Knecht 4 thing is really, really funny. And because there's a former Laker, and I don't think he actually wore this number with the Lakers. I think he wore number 11 with the Lakers, but Wes Johnson was a Laker, started off his career as a Minnesota Timberwolf, wore number 4. But that's not our only Wes Johnson SEC connection, because Georgia head baseball coach Wes Johnson has signed an extension to be the coach. It was announced yesterday. We went over it a little bit yesterday, maybe not so much. Maybe not so much as in detail, because we don't have a ton of information. All we really know is that it's going to be 2030 is what the contract will run to. And we mentioned this in the whole first half of the first hour of the show today, that the SEC baseball is in a little bit of an arms race right now. And if you got your coach that you believe can take you to Omaha on a consistent basis, you lock them up, and it's going to take more than over $1.5 million per year to do so now. We went from one SEC coach in Tim Corbin being paid $1.5 million per year in 2022 to 2 years later, we potentially have 9. Pretty significant stuff going on in the SEC when it comes to baseball coaching and those baseball coaching salaries like we discussed.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Wes Johnson deserves it, right? I mean, in 1 year with Georgia, he's 1 win away from the College World Series. I mean, they bowed out early, but this was a team that people felt like could do some damage if they got to the College World Series. They were hitting dingers left and right. Of course, it helps when you have the presumptive number 1 overall pick in the MLB draft.
I hope my draft luck continues and he falls to Cincinnati at 2. I would be.
That would, that'd be interesting. Maybe Jack will go number 1. There's some talk about that. I don't think that's going to happen. But look, my question is, can he sustain that level of talent over the next couple of years, right? You're not always going to have the number 1 overall pick on your team.
Yep.
That does wonders for your team and just being able to get on base. Was it a fluke? I don't think so. I think Wes Johnson is
Wes
Johnson
Jay's an LC. There's a lot of coaching Johnsons. Yeah, Skip Johnson will be an SEC coach with Oklahoma starting next year.
Yes. I think Wes Johnson did an incredible job. I mean, better than probably most expected with Georgia. I mean, clearly, one they should have beaten NC State, in my opinion. I think they were the better team.
Dug themselves a hole after getting clubbed in game 1.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, deserving. And again, we've seen, it's the arms race that you keep talking about, right? Like, if you don't lock these guys up, somebody else is going to get them for, a larger price tag, and you're going to lose a very talented head coach. So the name of the game is, if you've got something working, keep it.
And Ohio State taking Campbell's coach in terms of conference arms races, if this is a sign that Ohio State's going to start giving a what about baseball, that's one of those athletic departments. It's the wealthiest athletic department, or at least most profitable. They might not have the wealthiest donor base. They have a few very wealthy donors, but in terms of profitable athletic departments, they have the most profitable one in the country. If they're going to start, forwarding some money, letting some money trickle down to the baseball program, and they start caring, they can end up being really good if they just care about it. Any sport Ohio State really cares about, they end up getting really good at it one time or another. So that'll be another interesting thing to see if the Big Ten tries to put in any resources to be even somewhat competitive, to be able to get somewhat of the action in Omaha down in the future, to at least be able to get some of that extra revenue going their way, given what the TV rights deal is right now and what it might be in the future as well. Continue our drive around the SEC, and we'll tie in Ohio State into this as well, because in terms of sports memories that have made us cry, in terms of tears of sorrow when I was a kid, definitely to this day still remember when Tennessee and Ohio State played in the Sweet 16 in 2006. Ramar Smith, Tennessee had a massive lead. I want to say it was like 17, 18 points. And at this point in time, Tennessee had never been to an Elite Eight, and was in the car with my dad. My dad was dropping me off at my mom's house. We're listening to the game on the radio. I did not watch this game live. We're straight up listening to the soothing tones of Bob Kessling's voice, and which definitely soured the more the game went on. They got up like 17 points, get to my mom's house, we go straight to the bedroom. My mom just moved into this house, so she doesn't have her TV there yet, but we have a radio. So I'm turning the game on the radio. I'm like, Mom, I got to be left alone a little bit. Tennessee's a half away from going to the Elite Eight.
Sure.
Big deal. Well, they completely gag it away. Just completely gag the game away. Stop making threes, turn the ball over. But they still had a chance down 1 to win the game. And Ramar Smith goes, he's driving to the rim, and Greg Oden just swats that thing. Swats the ball out of bounds as the buzzer sounds. And I, as an 11-year-old, just lost it. Was the worst. Was one of the worst experiences. I was just inconsolable. You would have thought that I personally lost the game.
Was that 06 or 07?
Or 07. I mean, the 06-07 season.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, because Florida took care of Greg Oden
after that.
And they're back to back. Yeah. In the national championship game. Yeah.
Yeah.
They clobbered Ohio State.
That one was never particularly close.
No, it wasn't.
It ended up being a closer score, but like the spirit of that game was like a 20-point game.
Yeah. I mean, from the get-go, it was a lot like that UCLA game the year before. Just Florida was the better team. I mean, those two teams were insane. And it's funny. Someone was making the point the other day. They brought up that those back-to-back national title Florida teams, and it's like you're never going to see that again. In this portal era, NIL world, like you're never ever going to see something like that happen again.
Because even when UConn won it this year, they lost a lot.
They did.
Right, Klingon didn't start on last year's team. He had to start on this year's team.
Right,
Cam Spencer wasn't there.
Yes,
Stephon Castle, who got taken in the top 5, wasn't there.
Right, and to me, that's the downside. Right, that is the downside of the portal. It makes a lot of sense. Everybody who's against it and NIL, right? Like they're against the continuity of a team from year to year, right? You're not going to see the same guys play, and there's a lot of truth to that. But yeah, UConn did it. But I just moving forward, I don't think that these things are going to happen, as frequently as they did. I mean, these back-to-backs or, these spurts where you've got, 2 national titles in 3 years or whatever it is, you're just not going to see it that much.
We'll get your thoughts as we conclude the postgame show coming up next. Final segment as we are barreling towards the finish line of another week. Getting a little closer to 4th of July. A little bit closer, but we're almost there. One segment away until it's weekend time, man.
It's true.
That Friday beer is calling my name. Staring at me like the Green Goblin mask.
There we go. Yeah, I'm more of a bourbon guy.
Nice. Okay, I've been getting into it a little bit.
Good. Yeah, not a huge beer guy, but definitely beer kind of upsets my stomach. But
I've had to cut
bourbon's
back.
good.
I've had to cut back on the beer to help with shedding the pounds. So
yeah,
I have to reserve it for one day a week, and if I'm reserving it for a day a week, that means it's going to be on Friday.
Good for you, man.
Going to enjoy it.
Absolutely.
On Friday. A buddy of mine has gotten me on to rye whiskey a little bit.
There we go.
Because he's a big bourbon guy. Shout out Sandlin. Big bourbon guy. And he invited me over to his house. Like, taste some things. I'm like, I'm not really, huge into it, but I'll try it. Discovered big rye whiskey guy.
Yeah.
So
Old fashions?
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
Big fan.
Yeah. You should, Angel's Envy makes a rye that is one of the sweetest things I've ever tasted in my life.
Angel's Envy.
But you might like it. It's good.
We're going to try that. We're going to hit that up.
Or you may hate it. It could go either way.
It's polarizing.
It is polarizing.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, even more incentive to try
100%.
it and see if I mess around and find out.
Yes.
As I like to say. But the theme of the day is we were talking about a lot of sporting events that have brought us to tears. We got a couple really good entries here on the text line that we'll get to before we dip out of today's show. And Teddy texted in, said he worked third shift and had to be at work as the Gamecocks were about to win their first College World Series in 2010. Got to work and got a little teary-eyed.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a very good one. And people ask you, at work, you okay? You're like, actually, no, I've never been better. I know this may
These are tears of joy.
This may look a little tough. Never been better, actually. We have two back-to-back texts, one from CB and one from a nameless texter. And both of them say the day Dale Earnhardt died at Daytona in 2001.
Yeah, for sure. That was an emotional day for sure. I can't imagine being there and covering that. I covered the 500 a few times. Cannot imagine being there that day.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Being there, especially, that would be honestly pretty traumatizing. And there's one we could have plugged into the drive around the SEC because it's an all-time SEC moment. Chris, who is an Alabama fan from West Columbia, says 2013 Iron Bowl. And I'm not going to lie, Chris, I was kind of excited about that. Yeah, I might have cried tears of joy after that, even at the expense of your sorrow.
Yeah, that was a good one. I'm trying to pull up Facebook here. So Nancy says, I cry every year at the pre-race ceremonies at the Indy 500 when they play taps and then the flyover. And then Steven says, I'm a Jets fan, so every day I cry.
Jets, Jets. Making your fans cry for the wrong reason.
Yes.
That's remarkable.
I think that was it for the USC ones. When Carolina beat Clemson in 22 in the Palmetto Bowl, got another one of those. So that's a good one. Another 2019 Masters, that's another one. When SC men lost, when the SC men's basketball team lost in the Final Four out in Phoenix. That was a sad day. A lot of momentum just came to a screeching halt. But, just such unexpected momentum that year in 2017. No one expected Carolina to get past Duke in the second round in Greenville.
Massive upset,
they were happy to be there, I know people want, at that point, it's like, why not win the whole thing? But just to be in the Final Four that year, was just remarkable under Frank.
Got a couple proud parent moments on here. One was when my son's college soccer team won their only game of the season and his final career game at Erskine.
Nice.
That's kind of cool.
That is
Not
cool.
going winless until then. That kind of sucks. But winning the last one,
for sure.
going out on a win is pretty sweet. And another texter says 2016, having son pitch complete game for Coastal Carolina against number one Florida on Father's Day.
Oh, that's cool.
On their way to winning the championship.
Yeah, in 2016.
16, yeah.
Wow,
that
that's
kicks ass,
very cool.
dude. That's a good one. You might have the winner coming in at the buzzer. Again, he's Mike Gillespie. I'm Elijah. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, bud.
We'll see you again next week.